Hello and welcome to the Hero Live Show. My name is Paulie and I'd like to introduce a wonderful man and a good friend, Jarod Kaplan. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Paulie. It's really lovely to speak to you in this forum. I'm looking forward to the convo.
Yes, so am I. And Jarod, you've been in the field of being able to support people through your counselling background for quite some time. And I know you also support other counsellors in a mentoring sense. And I thought it'd be a really good idea to get you on the show to have a chat to you about what your experiences have been to be able to support men transitioning to fatherhood, and indeed men who have found themselves as fathers, and all the challenges that have come up for them.
Yeah, it's a definitely being a father and
Yeah.
fairly 18 months old on my own journey, and professionally, it's something that interests me a hell of a lot, and I'm up for answering any questions, asking questions of you, and also just having a rich conversation.
Beautiful, love that. So in your rich history of being able to support people of all walks of life and types, our audience here is predominantly men and people who are dealing with these challenges of being a father in this modern world that we live in. What initially comes up for you first as a counselor when it comes to when I say challenges of being a father?
Mm, mm. It's a pretty big question. I mean, being a father is such a demanding, all-encompassing identity change and job, really. So, I mean, there are so many different facets to what it means to be a father and be a present and be a beneficial father. I mean, the first thing, and I don't know if this even relates to your question, being a mental health professional and being someone who identifies as a male, I tend to see a lot of young men and a lot of fathers. Um, and the thing that strikes me most for a lot of people, for a lot of young men, making sense of the world around them and their relationship to the world, is the absence of a father.
Mm.
Either quite literally, there is just no dad around, or a father that is just not present. And so, look, at least anecdotally, at least for the clients that I've seen over my 15-year career, there's this like quite often there's this very strong correlation between a young man, the mental health issues that they might experience, and the absence, literally or um, you know, less obviously, of a consistent father in their life. Yeah.
The absence of having a male figure in your life, what have you experienced with guiding your clients through this, and what have they kind of reflected back on you?
Yeah, I like first and foremost, I think it just, we could even replace the word father with parent. And so
Mm.
it's just so important for people to have engaged caregivers in their life, whether they're biological or not. And, secondarily to that, in a kind of heteronormative nuclear family where there's mother and there's father and there's child, um, quite often, the mother caregiver is the primary caregiver.
Mhm.
And that's shifted over the last few decades, but I still see a lot of young people whose fathers are, 9 to 5ing or longer and not as able to be as present. And there's a yearning for a lot of young men to want that guidance, that coaching, that support that an extra parent in the family can provide. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I found through guiding a lot of fathers in the hero program is this inner struggle between identifying with wanting to be present and available and be a role model and be available in a physical sense for their children, but having this expectation, whether it's been passed down generationally, for them to need to be at the office or to provide or to have all this. And there's this internal struggle that's going on within fathers for a lot of it. So I'm really keen to explore that and see how that's manifested today in 2021, because gender roles have kind of changed and evolved so much. There's a real depth of expectation on fathers to be available in more than one sense.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly I felt that as a parent and as a father, and that's definitely, you know, a lot of clients share that, this kind of inner conflict between a lot of male clients. It's inner conflict between desperately wanting to be present and definitely wanting to break, you know, the stereotype of man going to the factory to, you know, provide the resources and being absent, but also being in a situation where they might be the primary breadwinner and needing to be out in the world for far longer than they would love to be. Yeah. And that inner conflict can lead to a lot of stress. And it's a very difficult dilemma for a lot of men to navigate.
And have you found yourself kind of, kind of working through this with various different clientele? What kind of challenges have you found that have come up, and have you worked through any particular solutions where it comes to, or should I say, strategies to be able to help bring both identity senses to the surface and being able to nourish both senses of what it is to be an active father and a willing breadwinner as well for the family?
Yeah. Look, it is something that comes into my counselling room quite often. At the moment, one of my referral sources is a maternal child health nurse who works really closely with mothers and recognises this particular professional, really recognising that the dads are struggling and referring them off to me, and, you know, beginning the conversations of how to navigate through some of those more kind of masculine issues that come up for dads as they have a child. You know, the issues that they face, I think Hero, having been a graduate of Hero and, you know, read a lot of your content, really, like, I think you and Dan really articulate them really well. They're not mysterious. It's literally, in some respects, a dilemma of resources. You know, you have a new child and all of a sudden an enormous amount of time and energy, emotionally, physically, psychologically, gets poured into this new identity as a father. For a lot of men, obviously, they need to keep working. Maybe they have 3 weeks of parental leave, if at all, you know, and then they're straight back into work. And naturally, and this is no surprise, I don't feel like I'm saying anything new, the first thing that gives way is their physical health and well-being, which also requires time and effort, you know, to tend to. And so, yeah, you know, to repeat what I've said before, grappling between these like 3 important, really different identities: professional, family, and you know, individual physical health and well-being. Yeah. And so, I mean, for a lot of people, just starting to have that conversation and to talk about it with an objective, supportive other can be incredibly helpful. There is no one solution for any particular person. I think every solution needs to be tailored and bespoke to the person that's experiencing the dilemma themselves. And so inevitably they come into my office and we have this really powerful opportunity for the person to start to make sense of what's happening for them. It's not always so obvious for the person that's experiencing that identity crisis or that, you know, those conflicts we were talking about, to make sense of it. I'm a mental health professional. I deal with this all the time. And surprise, surprise, you know, 2 months into my daughter being born, I wasn't able to see the solution so clearly for myself. So, of course, what did I do? I went to Hero, received some of that, you know, physical, emotional, and wellness, you know, support. But I also spoke to the people in my life who help me make sense of these dilemmas as well. So firstly, speaking about it with someone can be incredibly powerful. I don't know if I've actually answered your question there. Does that get
No,
anywhere?
it completely does, and it speaks more on top of that to the identity that you were kind of touching on. Given when we grow up as a man, there's this sense of individuality, and I know I identify very strongly with it, being a single man and having my entire existence revolve around what I wanted to do on a day-to-day basis. And then you step into a lifelong relationship with a partner, and all of a sudden your world changes significantly, and then you bring another being into this universe that is completely dependent on you, and all of a sudden your sense of who you are changes very, very swiftly. And I can understand how challenging that can be to navigate from a personal standpoint. And even for myself, being in the health space, from in a professional sense, even from a physical standpoint, I dropped the ball to a certain degree, and just needed to really get my bearings as a result of that. But you saying, being in the mental health space, needing to adjust and really just get your bearings as well. It happens to everybody, regardless of what professional background they may or may not have. It's a very personal and deeply challenging experience in all different kinds of ways for everyone that I've spoken to.
Mm. It's interesting. I completely agree with everything you've just said. And the thing that jumped out at me when you were just speaking was when you said, and even I, drop the ball in this area. And being, a counselor, and what I'm interested in as a professional is, how do people respond when they drop the ball? What happens for them in their own inner world when they drop the ball?
Yeah.
And what I find working with men is really consistently, I notice this, that a lot of guys really beat themselves up really badly when they drop the ball, whether it be their own physical or emotional health, whether it's that domain, whether they've dropped the ball and not caring for their child as much as they'd like to, and waking up in the middle of the night or whatever it might be, or whether it be professionally. I think men have a really strong track record of some pretty intense self-flagellation when it comes to dropping the ball. And I think it's so important for fathers to learn how to look after themselves physically. I'm really interested in how they learn to look after themselves emotionally, and that includes, when we start, beating ourselves up. And I think for a lot of dads, that happens in the first, year after baby 1, 2, or even, more are born. Yeah, we get better at it, but it hits hard the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm 16 weeks into baby number 2, and once again the goalposts shift, and the reality presents itself as a very, very different manifestation. But you mentioned the existence of physical health, and then your particular interest in mental and emotional health. But I'd love to speak to the correlation and the relationship between the two of them, and what your experience has been with being able to kind of touch on one to be able to lift the other up.
Yeah. I think that, this is a question that I'd love to answer from lived experience.
Right.
I love, when I tune on to your Facebook page or any of your, hero socials, I keep seeing this kind of like little aphorism that you guys keep posting, which is, when the body moves, the mind grooves. And for me, nothing has been truer. I historically have never been, an intense exerciser. I've always moved and kept myself healthy. But what I've found, particularly as my resources are being stretched and time is being stretched, that if I just moved, no matter how much I didn't feel like it, no matter how much I was experiencing an aversion to moving and just wanting to stay under the warm doona for another half an hour, when I just moved, it like magic. Something chemical shifts in the body, and it elevates my mood. But I do think it's not as simple as that. I wish it was. I wish the cure to mental health issues was as simple as moving the body. It's not. And I think there has to be other approaches as well. And there are infinite approaches to working with psychological and emotional suffering. And I think it's really important for all people to find the unique approaches that support them. I mean, that's what I do as a counsellor. I'm interested in various different approaches, and I meet a person and we talk about it, what's going on for them, and we find the right approach. Obviously, I come with information, but we do that together. And that can look like a lot of different, the pathways can look really different, Paulie.
Yeah.
Even just as a starting point, being able to acknowledge what's difficult is incredibly powerful. Not globally, what's globally difficult. Oh, being a new dad is difficult. That can be really difficult, but how is it difficult for me? What are the unique challenges that I face? And once we start to kind of understand them, then solutions become more obvious. And I think starting to open up to talking about challenges opens up possibilities. Yeah.
Have you found that broaching that subject or that topic with men in general can be, I suppose, you need to dig a little bit deeper to be able to bring certain vulnerabilities to the surface? Or is that just a commonality amongst humans, not specifically men?
I'm always careful not to gender stereotype. Look, I think men, my experience of masculine environments has always been, I played football my whole life, has always been that, men don't do emotions so well, or necessarily speak about them. That's certainly changing. But, in a professional setting, people tend to self-refer to me. People, and by that I mean people make the call to want to speak to a counsellor. So there's already a readiness to to address a challenge, and being a professional that works with emotions and thoughts, the men that tend to come to me have probably already taken a giant leap in that they're on the phone, wanting support. But if I had to hang my hat on an answer, Paulie, I'd say, yeah, men generally do tend to avoid vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that there's been, like you said, there's definitely been a shift of recent times, but I don't know, there does appear to be this burden when you step into fatherhood to be able to take on this burden and do rather than feel, and actually, like really absorb what is taking place and going on. But there seems to be a shift, and there seems to be a shift taking place universally.
Well, I love what you just said then. There's this impulse to do rather than feel, and that's certainly something that I experienced, which surprised me even. All of a sudden I became an intense doer. I wanted to just get the job done and to apply solutions physically in my immediate environment, at the expense of actually checking in and saying, what's happening for me? What else do I need besides practical solutions? And yeah, I think, men do often, knee-jerk towards a very practical solution. And that, I work as a relationship counsellor too, so that's quite a big facet of the work I do. And one of the cliched issues that kind of come up between male and female, if we're talking about a heterosexual couple, is the woman might actually communicate some of the challenges she's having to her partner, and then he might say, well, why don't we do this and this and this to remedy it? And she might say, I just want you to acknowledge that it's difficult for me. Isn't that enough? And him being really confused. And so, there is power in just being able to communicate a challenge rather than have to fix it immediately. Yeah.
And that I know from being able to, from my own personal experience, but also from speaking to close male friends, that's a real challenge for a lot of typically male-minded people to wrap their heads around. They're like, "What do you mean? Why can't I just fix this? Why can't I just do?" Yeah, I get that. Let's just shift pace a little bit to your own experience. I'm just keen to hear a little bit about, what drew you towards the Hero program itself, and you stepping into it. Let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. Results. What drew me to the Hero program was seeing the testimonials and the real life results that your clients were posting, and some of whom I knew personally. Now, my own personal experience is that I have always been fairly, in regards to looking after my own well-being, physical, emotional, psychological, I've always been really proactive. And when I had Junie, my little girl, 18 months ago, my physical well-being took a back seat. But I expected that to some extent. What I didn't expect was to feel very little motivation to support myself physically. And so that became, that's when I found myself in deeper water. Not only when I wasn't eating as healthily, sleeping as well, and exercising as much, when I was finding myself with very little motivation to do it. And that was a little bit of a vicious cycle for me, because the less motivated I became, the more I expected of myself, the more stressful, it triggered more stress in me. And then 6 months goes by and I'm the unfittest I've ever been in my life and the most exhausted I've ever been in my life. And so it was an intervention really for me. It was a way of, literally engaging professionals who have incredible amount of experience, being you and Dan, seeing results around me and surrendering to a process that I wasn't able to implement myself. I know both you and Dan personally, so I knew a little bit about the process, and I believe really strongly in it. And it turns out that, my intuition was spot on.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, and it seems like the motivation and the experience that you had moving into this program was not uncommon amongst fathers. It just goes back to talking about that significant shift in the reality that we find ourselves in, and us just being caught in this deer in the headlights situation that can last. I mean, you talk about it spanning over, into a 6-month period, but we're dealing with some men that has spanned it into a 30-year period.
Mm-hmm. Well, I felt really lucky, Paulie, because being a mental health professional, one of the conditions of my practicing and registering with my peak body is that I see a mental health professional really regularly. It's part of the mentorship and training that I receive. And so I was able to talk through some of the emotional and psychological challenges that I was having. Particularly, that little vicious cycle that I pointed out to you, which is like the motivation wanes, I do less, and then surprise, surprise, I start to beat myself up for doing less, which leads to less motivation. I was able to cover the psychological and emotional element of it. And so I got to have these really rich conversations with my counselor, and the obvious solution was literally finding a program for me that helped me to keep me accountable. I was literally outsourcing some of the motivation. I was saying, I need people to support me to motivate myself. And so that was a real no-brainer for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's some absolute clarity, and that's wonderful. I love that you've been able to articulate that, because it's really kind of got me thinking about not just the way the human body works, but the way the mind works in conjunction with it, and how we do get physical results. And that's just kind of really crystallized a couple of things for me personally. So thank you for that, mate. And thank you for being able to just openly and honestly discuss some of the challenges that you've had in work with men in general in this space, but also your own personal challenges that you've had when little Junie came on board, and you were able to, I suppose, like you said, outsource certain aspects, but now become fully equipped with the resources to be able to take charge and control of your health moving forward.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really important to me when I participate in any personal growth activity is that is underpinned by evidence base. And what I found when my daughter was born is I had just less time to research, to go down Google rabbit holes, and to spend the time to research, what program is going to be best for me. And so I was really lucky because, I know people that have done your program, and I'm exposed to your program through my relationship with you and Dan. And I didn't have to look far to see that it was an evidence-based, tried and tested program. But those are one of the things that can, be a barrier to finding support, and knowing that yours was, it has a strong evidence base behind it was really important for me. And then moving forward, my daughter's 18 months old now, and I graduated from the Hero program in January of this year. And needless to say, there's been a little period where I relapsed here and relapsed there. What's really amazing for me is that I can just, I now have the tools and the framework to be able to just replicate exactly what I did in the program. I know it's evidence-based. I know it works. I just have to do it now. And so there's been a period of a month where everything went backwards. That tends to correlate with the period where Junie's teething, and sleep goes out the window, and there's not a lockdown, and we all know how that goes. And say, all right, back to basics. I'm going to do what I know works. And so I think that's one of the power of relying on an evidence-based support program, which is what Hero has been for me. Yeah,
I totally love that. And just being able to have that ability to simplify things, acknowledge when something is not humming along as it has in the past, and being able to say, right, the fancy stuff goes out the window now. Let's simplify things. Let's go back down to basics, and then we can build on that slowly if need be in the future, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Jarod, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
I thought it had been 2 minutes. I could talk for another 5 hours about Hero. I really love your program, and
and I love you. So it's a beautiful match made in heaven. So thank you for having me on, and thanks for talking about your experience as well, and the incredible value that you're offering people through your guidance and work that you're doing is wonderful. I'd love to, with your permission, be able to provide some kind of contact details to those that are seeking some kind of additional support. If that's okay, we'll put that in the details down below as well.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's always the most efficient way to find me. Yeah.
Love it. That's perfect.
Alrighty.
Thanks, JJ.
Thanks, Paulie.